are, finally. All the delays on the weekly videos are because of me. So I am sorry we're not posting.
What's left is not delayed. We come out weekly.
Okay.
So we are on time.
Okay, here is from What's Left, a political discussion challenging the liberal left, mostly, and progressives, I noticed.
Yes.
Anything on the left spectrum. So here we are. We will be discussing the topic of immigration. This was last minute change.
I literally... Go ahead.
No, you say what you did.
I literally texted Eduardo like 45 minutes ago to an hour ago saying we should change this to immigration. We were going to talk about North Korea. We had this all lined up. I read some stuff. I'm sure you read some stuff. But Donald Trump does it again. And I think this is the more important topic to talk about right now. I think we'll get to North Korea next week. I personally believe, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that will come up again.
Yeah.
But this is happening. There's a lot of frenzy in the media right now, and even deals being made with Democrats and Republicans. So let's get to it. So immigration. Since you changed it, what do you want to say about it? Let's have you start then.
Okay. So ostensibly, what has been the uproar has been the recent, or at least recent exposed policy of separating families at the border, putting parents in one part of a prison-like situation, children in another kind of prison, and those families being separated at the border instead of being allowed in, and parents being sent home, kids being kept in prison because the processing times are different. This is part of an awful immigration policy the United States has, and people are rightfully outraged. I'll say that. I have more to say about it because it's obvious that this is an awful policy. It's obviously racist, but I'll leave it at that unless you want to hear more. Do you have anything you want to say about what's going on?
Yeah, I was listening to Democracy Now! That's one of the sources I listen to daily, and I have other sources, but I want to make sure that you don't think that I'm just being biased.
Whatever. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, liberal media. And I was listening to in some of the heartbreaking stories that they were shedding light on, and it was very heartbreaking because, when it comes to families, especially when you think about asylum seekers, I always think of how they should be prioritized and how this administration was really after immigrants that were criminals, gangsters, MS-13, and after people with just a criminal history in their background. This is not what the administration said that they would go after. This would be low on their priority. That's what Donald Trump said on the campaign, that when reporters like Jorge Ramos was asking Donald Trump's campaign, who would you go after? He said that he would go after the gangsters. And we're seeing time and time and again that this administration is just interested in halting all immigration and interested in separating families and deterring people by scaring them, by having all immigrants fearing coming over the border, by showing that they are going to be harsh and cruel. So that was one of the things that I just wanted to point out. I'm not saying that Donald Trump wasn't going to go after these families, I'm saying that he made it seem like it was on the lowest on the priority list. This is not true, and I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew he was going to eat his words. I knew that was just a way to tell people, oh, don't worry about it, we're really just going to halt immigration for the benefit of the U.S. American people. We're going to get rid of the bad hombres, as he would say, right? When Mexico sends its people, it's sending it's rapists, it's drug addicts. So these are the people he's supposed to go. Families aren't criminals, and people who have no criminal history are now all of a sudden having a criminal history as they're being criminalized for just entering the country. So it's a hypocrisy, and that's what I have to say about it. And it's really sad and disheartening.
I completely agree that Trump is he's no friend of the American worker, and he's no friend of an immigrant from anywhere, particularly if you come from South America or Africa or one of the Muslim or predominantly Muslim countries, or the Middle Eastern countries, I guess I should say. For me, I think it's important to understand, well, as I see it, there are two political parties playing a political game with the lives of people at the border. The Republican Party and Trump and the Republican Party are trying to push this issue, it appears to me, so that they can force an agreement with the Democrats around the question of DACA for the wall. So
Yes.
we'll give you DACA, and then Trump gets to have his wall. And the Democrats are doing the same thing. They're highlighting this issue to force this question because the elections are coming up, and they believe that Trump has now had a recent victory around South Korea, North Korea, so they want to hit him where they believe he's weak and expose him on this policy. The reason I say I believe the Democrats are doing that is well, there's a number of things. First, this policy started under John Kelly, who was the policy of actually separating families at the border.
Mm-hmm.
This has been going on for a year.
Yeah, because this already was in place.
Right, this was in place. John Kelly is the guy who was the recent chief of staff now to put there for that Trump put as chief of staff. He was formerly Homeland Security. The people who so lauded the work that John Kelly did was the Democratic Party. They let that guy fly through to become chief of staff because they felt that he was one of them. They felt that he was going to make the New York Times, Washington Post, all talked about how John Kelly was a elder statesman, very reasonable, and that he was the person who was going to get Trump to be more reasonable. The guy who actually is responsible for this policy that everyone's crying about right now. Mm-hmm. He started it. So that was going on a year ago. Why wasn't anybody saying anything then? Number one. Number two, the idea of separating families. The biggest separator of families of all our presidents is Barack Obama. Yes. He's responsible for the return, actually, of more immigrants taken from their house, taken from their jobs, than Bush. He did 3 million. Bush did 2 million. Clinton did about 1 million of people, where you literally grab people and send them back. That's called a removal. And Barack Obama is responsible for doing that. How he did that was by putting the connection between the police and the ICE, right, with secure communities all across the country, and by putting massive amounts of money, basically about a 3,000% increase in ICE and immigration funding for security. So for him, it wasn't so much border security, it was building a mass police apparatus within this country to break up families and send them back home. Mm-hmm. So if you think that was fine, if you're upset about Trump breaking up families, you should be upset about the number of families that were broken up under Obama. In fact, we know a family who fell subject to that, right? Mm-hmm. Who fell subject to their dad essentially being sent back to Mexico without ever being heard from. Mm-hmm. Pretty much again. That he knows about this, all right? So, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we both, and I know other families as well.
Right.
Because I worked in the Mission District, and I worked with many families.
Right, and this is people who never got to see each other before you went. And let's be clear, Trump is doing the whole racist thing, M13, the gangs, stuff like that. But that was the whole Barack Obama line. Barack Obama's line was, I'm going to make sure that these people who are immigrants who are in prisons, they're the ones who are going to be cleared out and sent home. Most of those people were in prisons for visa violations or for crossing the border without being able to have done. So he had basically already said, oh, those are the criminals that I'm sending back. But he was using the same racist language of these people are criminals. It's just that he hid it behind a veneer of, I feel your pain, I'm against racism as well. But again, that's what bugs me the most about this is not Trump, who's obviously going to be doing things like this. It's the massive hypocrisy, really, of liberals who are suddenly so upset about this, and they're falling for what it really is this is a Democratic Party operation to try to win the elections or win back the Congress right now, and they're going to use immigrants as a stepping stone for them getting elected so they can once again deport more immigrants, mm-hmm. which is what they did when they were elected. So there's no win in this game with Trump or with Clinton or with the Republicans or with Democrats. We have nothing to gain by listening to either of these sides. And both of them are interested in enforcement. Both of those parties are interested in sending immigrants back. One of those parties is going to lie to your face and tell you that he's for immigrants or they're for immigrants while they're deporting them.
Mm-hmm. I certainly agree that Obama was even considered amongst immigrant activist communities as the deporter in chief. I certainly agree with that. And he was, if you compare him with his predecessors before him, yes, he had deported massive people during his administration. I do think that this is more exasperated. Is that a word?
Yeah.
I just want to exasperate it. I think that under Donald Trump, an unpredictable, mentally unstable narcissist, and also nationalist, patriot, and nationalist, that he is going to, he has specifically, has some appointed as well, and not to say about Kelly, I know that he was also given the pass by many Democrats. I'm simply saying that it has been exasperated and magnified. My position is that it's more so than, and he is continuing the legacy of Obama at a very accelerated, even bigger scale, I think. And as far as your other point that you said about Democrats, they are using it to their advantage for the midterm elections that will be happening, especially in 2018. It's very forth-telling year for the next coming years that will happen, because this is a very important year in November, especially. What I do think is that there are now exercising parts of the law that were sort of waived before, and now you have families being separated that were being separated before, but now you have children being ripped apart from their mothers that wasn't seen in previous administration. Mm-hmm. This is my understanding. We can disagree on it, and you can tell me what you know, but from my understanding, especially having listened, and I can list some things from some of the pundits that actually do have experts that know about this, that there were parts of deporting people that they would categorize as ranking, saying this is less threatening and this is higher priority to deport. Families, women, especially with children, would not be separated from their babies like you have now, the 8-month-old babies being separated from their mothers. This is something that was already in the books, in law, to do, but has now been exercised. And this is what Jeff Sessions has said, that he is only fulfilling. He quoted some scripture that I don't remember, something in Romans, that even was used in the Confederacy to justify all the discrimination acts against African Americans. You know, he said that he is only fulfilling on how do you call it? Following the law, abiding by the law, which is, as Sarah Sanders, the press secretary, just reiterated from what he was trying to say. And that is, I feel, something not new, but something that is being exercised at a greater scale today than it was in previous administration.
Well, I think that yes, they're doing something different. They're attacking immigrants in a different way. You could say an escalated way.
To deter, to scare off,
right? But
families to come, right?
Right, but as opposed to having that separation occur at the border, that separation did occur when ICE agents were breaking into houses. That's what was happening. They were breaking into houses, picking up sections of families, sometimes a mother and a son, but who also had a mother. You know, they were going in and taking people out of houses and sending them back, returning them. Right? That's what was going on. So this is a different thing. But let's remember, what's even happening now didn't start just like last week.
No.
It's been going on for about a year or a year and a half. It was going on. In fact, that's why this John Kelly thing is important. It was going on under John Kelly when the Democrats were speaking his praises. He started this policy under Homeland Security. The Democratic Party knew about that. So the question is why is it being highlighted right now? I think there's two reasons. The Democrat Party knew that policy was in play when this guy was said, not only have you done a great job in Homeland Security separating families at the border. Let's remember that. They didn't tell you that, but that's what he was doing. But we think you're the guy who's going to keep Trump in check. Think about that. Think about the cynicism of that thing that's being done by the Democratic Party. Here's why I believe you're hearing about this now. You didn't hear about it a year ago. There's two reasons. One is Trump has had a massive success with the South Korean peace deal that the Democrats are concerned is going to undercut their ability to win the elections in 2018, win back the Senate and the House. All right. Number two, there's a Department of Justice trial going on right now, right? Looking into the stuff around Comey and this woman and man and the FBI who looked like they were helping Clinton and hurting Trump. All these investigations are going on right now, literally right now. Both those things are being put are being like swept under the rug, all right? So this is just politics. If you are upset with Trump cynically using the lives of these people for his own political aims, you should be upset. But you should be equally upset with the Democrats who are doing the same thing. They are identical in the attack on immigrants. It's just they do it in a different way. Obama has been more successful in breaking up families, but through a different method. Basically, usually shunting them into a prison first, and then from the prison, sending them back home without their family being able to do anything. That's how he did it. So again, I'm not going to choose between which way you attack immigrants and say, oh, I'd rather we do it that way than this way. I don't think, well, we get into this, I don't think there should be any border. I don't believe in any of these laws. Why should you be basically subjecting any of these people, any workers, I have no interest in this, in you attacking any immigrant for some law. If I can cross the bridge from San Francisco to Oakland, why can't you cross the bridge from Tijuana into San Diego? See no reason why not. We can get into why I say that, but
just like what Europe has.
Yeah, well, no, I'm for complete open borders. Europe doesn't have complete open borders. They don't. They have restrictions on those things, and I don't agree with those restrictions.
It's certainly easier to cross.
It's easier, but I don't believe any restriction. Why should there be any? Do I have to ask somebody permission to go to Oakland and get a job?
No, yes.
No, I don't, and I don't think anybody should have to. Why should workers restrict each other? This is just the capitalist game we're playing into. So that gets into something else. But no, I'm not for European. Europeans are a bunch of racists too, like with their walls and Arab immigrants kept out and things like that. No, we're more racist here in terms of our laws and terms of our border security. But I'm not for doing what Europe does either. Workers have no interest in securing a border in the way that Trump is talking about or Obama is talking about, because those are fellow workers in Mexico, right? They're fellow workers in Central America. I have more in common with them than I do with Obama or Trump or Clinton or Sanders. I have more in common with those workers over there than any of those politicians, and that's the thing that really is the message that I believe we have to get across, which is none of this should be going on. Nobody should be putting in any sort of pen because you crossed a line.
And just about workers and what you were saying about no borders, I was just telling you earlier, I'm going to say it now here, where I find it interesting why, and upsetting really, why there's so many thousands of US American expats living in Mexico, and they're considered expats and not immigrants. And you have people who want to move out here, and they're considered immigrants and not expats. Why is that? Why is it we have a different label for people who have, should I say, privilege, or people who are elite, and people who have power, and people who have money, right? So it's just a different angle, a different way of seeing, and we discussed how language also affects the way that we see people. And immigrants have a bad stereotype and a bad rep. Just as soon as you say you're an immigrant, you'll have a different reputation. As soon as you say you're an expat living in Mongolia, well, you're not seen as some sex trafficker, or you're not seen as someone exploiting the poor. You're seen as someone that is cool and hip and wonderful to be culturally sensitive or being cultured in a different country. I think that upsets me when I was sharing this article on my Facebook feed, because I feel many people oftentimes glorify these expats. Or, when I was, I stayed abroad for 2 years, lots of people were saying, wow, you're just another expat living in Europe, But, you have someone who is from an African country going out there to France, where I was staying at. They're not an expat, they're an immigrant, and my family who has immigrated here wouldn't be considered expats, they would be considered immigrants. I was just talking to someone on my drive here that, they face lots of discrimination here because there's lots of the same sort of ethnic background here. Whereas if you go somewhere where you're the minority, you're going to experience a different sort of you're going to represent something else for them. Just like I was when being Mexican in France, just Frida Kahlo all labeled all over me all the time. But, and exotified in different countries, depending on where you are. So that I do agree. I think that there is definitely this stigma that this happened with workers that are Mexican coming over here. People don't want these workers, and yet the economy is immigrants, right? These Latino Latinos who come here are the foundation of a lot of our economy. That
Yeah.
in California,
Yeah.
biggest agriculture producer, lots of workers here that are here. So
Well, they are definitely wanted here by the factory farms that exist here in
yeah.
California, for the cheap labor they supply, and like a number of the deportations that happened under Obama in this city happened because he did this whole thing when he strengthened the ICE and the police with doing social security number checks. And there were thousands of people who lost jobs in this city by the social security number checks that were done, particularly in the when cleaning floors and the janitorial industry. All right, so those people come here and do those jobs that are needed, whether it be cleaning or farming or jobs that are very hard to do, that are low wage, and capitalists have no problem with exploiting those people and bringing them over. All right, but what they want to do is under conditions when people are feeling like pinched, when people feel like our job opportunities aren't there for them, the capitalists want to basically point to these very same people they're willing to exploit and use and say they're the problem, right? They're taking resources from you. Again, a complete lie. Every immigrant pays taxes mostly in the form of sales tax. And anybody who doesn't earn much wage here in this country doesn't pay much income tax, pays most of their taxes in the form of sales tax. It's just that if you're a citizen, some of that sales tax you get back in the form of healthcare and education and whatever the California services the California state offers. Well, all these immigrants, whether you're decided legal or illegal, pay that same sales tax but don't get to use those services. So they're getting robbed all the time, doubly. Robbed by the capitalist who exploits them at their work, and then robbed by the state who basically doesn't give them any rights.
and if they use a fake social security, where is all that money going?
That's right. That's right.
They're not using it. They're
Yeah.
not definitely cashing in
Right.
from that for their retirement.
That's right.
That's all just going back to the system and is being used,
Right.
Here.
And again, the thing that I would be, and this gets back to what we talked about last time about the working class. These are my fellow workers are being exploited and used, right, this way, and I have no interest in having them treated that way. I'm in solidarity with them, not on just a moral basis, but on the basis of we have to unite as a class if we're going to take down our respective governments and our respective capitalist classes. All right. Any degree to which I fall for, well, these immigrants are allowed in and those immigrants aren't allowed in, is me falling for my best friend is my capitalist, my capitalist under the red, white, and blue. All right. So so it's not just Republicans falling for that nonsense. It's also many, many liberals, including many of the people you listen to on Democracy Now! Who buy into some form of we have to have a process of legalization. No, we don't. Just come on in. That's what I would say. Come on in. I
don't know why you're attacking Democracy Now! Why are you just tell me? Go ahead. Tell me.
Because
we're discussing here.
Well, because they're hypocrites. Because
Why are they hypocrites?
Because do they believe in open borders?
Certainly, many people who have come up.
I haven't heard them say it.
Amy Goodman is a reporter. She is mediating conversations. She is not stating her belief.
Well, you got to take a stand. Well, I'm sorry, but the things I've heard them say, is you've got to be willing to take a stand. She knows she's not just a reporter; she's also an advocate, and she's either for open borders or not. And I think she's.
Well, I don't know if she is or she's not.
Well, that's
and
great.
I think that'd be quick. Is a little bit going, you have to be careful with what you say if you're not sure of what her position is. I certainly do think that some of the pundits, that there are people who are invited to her show, have specific policy in mind. But I wouldn't say that all of her, the people she invites to be interviewed, are people who stand for just policies and not open borders.
All I'm going to say is that
Where's my tea?
that unless you are for open borders, then you are for some form of criminalizing immigrants and sending them back. If you're willing to tolerate any of those laws, whether you be Amy Goodman or any of the people, whoever, then I'm sorry, you might not be racist, but you're going to fall for the racist state, which is going to use your weakness on that issue against you and against your fellow worker, and you are going to be allowing them to basically exploit those workers, mistreat them.
Here's what I have to say about my position, because I want to make sure my position is clear.
Okay.
I do believe there should be open borders. When I said Europe, I was talking about that there aren't any restrictions. Though you can be Spanish, there are restrictions, but
there should be none. That's what open borders is not some restrictions.
I'm talking about my position.
Okay.
So when I say that in Europe, when I was referring to Europe, yes, I believe that there shouldn't be no fronteras. There shouldn't be any borders. There shouldn't be. What I don't think it's going to happen though. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think I'm a realist that I think that this government and the people here and the way that people are brainwashed are not going to have people are not going to want that, especially because we live in a very racist society. People are afraid, they're xenophobic, people don't want open borders. And when you have Donald Trump spewing things like, we want immigrants from Norway and not from these shithole countries, that gives people xenophobic ideas about people of color specifically. Norway is in Europe. Everyone, that's not how people are not afraid of an English immigrant or a Norwegian immigrant because of the media and the way that they're portrayed, correct? So what I mean is, realistically speaking, I do not think that people are going to want a completely no border, no policy for people to go back and forth, like you said, from San Francisco to Oakland. I don't think it's realistic that people are going to do that. I am for it if it was to happen. Like, I would also like California to be a sovereign state and to be independent. But I'm also a realist, my personal self, my position, right? And I don't think maybe that also kind of hinders me from also pushing the system to push for that, because that is what maybe I'm just sort of a pragmatist in that, or that's how I consider myself to be. If we have to have open borders, we have to start one step going there, and one step going there is what France and Spain and Italy and France has, where they do not have as many restrictions as they do from Mexico to the USA. My family cannot come here to visit me because there's just too many restrictions. There are too many restrictions. And that's all I was trying to say. I am for open borders. I am for no borders. Just pass. Just like you're going to go another city. And that's it. But how can we get there? I think it's sort of unrealistic to think, just like it's unrealistic to think that you can ask North Korea to disarm themselves. When you yourself have lots of nuclear arms. So all these demands that the Democrats are making on North Korea, by the way. Anyhow, so
that's a different subject.
I know, sorry.
But related.
My train of thought.
Related in hypocrisy.
So that's all I was trying to say about that. I think it's unrealistic.
Of course I think it's unrealistic, because I think the prospects for revolution are unreal. I think it's unlikely because the prospects for revolution are unlikely. But I think they're connected. That we're either going to have a revolution that takes down capitalism and gives us the things, a world we need to live in, or we're going to have a world that's going to destroy itself. Europe is not moving ever progressively towards a more pluralistic and open society. Europe, in the same way the world is moving towards nations breaking up into poles and going to war, Europe is doing the same thing, you'll notice. All the nationalisms are emerging for the same reasons. That once you accept the logic of capitalism even under the most minor reform version, it brings you into the logic of having to be separated from your fellow worker across some national line and having to pit my interests against yours, whether it be competing within the country or competing across some artificial border, a border whose only interest in preserving it is in the interests of those capitalist classes that live underneath that border, underneath that flag. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help us. So I don't think it's a demand that will also come along with taking down the capitalist class. But I don't think it's unrealistic to think that that teachers in this country could form union or a unity with teachers in Chiapas, in Mexico, who are fighting the very same privatization schemes. Why can't we actually unionize with them? Why not? Mm-hmm. Why couldn't we go on strike when they get attacked? Why couldn't they go on strike when we get attacked? Mm-hmm. Could such a world be possible? It will not be possible unless we as workers think about this world as a world of open borders. Even while the capitalists are constantly putting us in a prison, that's what these lines really are. These lines are prisons that allow the capitalists to decide how I'm going to control my working class and what workers I'm going to let in and out, because they do. Who was the last president who gave amnesty to immigrants?
Reagan.
Reagan gave amnesty to immigrants because it actually served the needs of capitalists under the conditions of low unemployment. All right, so they needed workers to come in at that time. All right, so this whole idea of when they let them in and when they push them out, for both Republicans and Democrats, because they're capitalists and they're capitalist parties, has nothing to do with interests of race, have nothing to do with interests of morality, have nothing to do with interests of Jeff Sessions' religion. It has to do with the needs of capital. And until we understand that, we're going to constantly be played. The reason I'm so cynical about what's happening right now is I know what's happening is wrong, but I know that the people who are beating the drum around it are trying to use what's wrong for their very cynical interests of getting us to think that they're our allies, the Democrats. And that's what they're going to do. And they've already, and we can't fall for that. As long as we fall for that, we are going to be trapped. And we're going to be held inside, we're all going to be held inside a kind of prison. And so I think that's what I'm fighting against. And the world I'm talking about won't be realized until we actually break out of this mental prison and physical prison of only fighting when the Republicans are doing the bad stuff and not fighting when the Democrats are doing it.
I want to point out something, Andy. You criticized one of my sources. Actually, you said all your sources or something like that. All my sources in media. And I think it's only fair for everyone to know that I just don't listen to Democracy Now! I do listen to other sources, all right? But I also want to know, what is wrong with you? Why are you criticizing those sources? State what you have to say. If you're going to say it, say it. Tell me. No, honestly, that's not the only source. Yes, I do listen. My liberal media is the BBC. I listen to the BBC. I listen to, I read and I listen to the audio part of The Guardian. Those are my mainstream ones. I don't really look at a lot the New York Times. I do from time to time, but I would think that Democracy Now! Is not your radical, unbiased media, but I would say that it is definitely a dissenting voice. On a dissenting voice on the far from the mainstream media. So it has a variety of voices that definitely has included even there was a very radical person. If you listened about what's happening in Nicaragua, there was someone that was arguing with Amy Goodman, who is the host today, and she invited him, and he was very hostile towards Juan Gonzalez and Amy Goodman. So I would quite say that they're quite fair on bringing a variety of voices, even when they're contradicting them or going against them. So I'm not sure what you have to say about that. But since you decided to diss my sources of media, you might as well. And I'm not just talking from one topic to another, but you did publicly try to shame me and my media.
No, I apologize if you take it as me shaming you.
No, it's not shaming me.
I do.
I'm exaggerating. But you had something to say, so say it fully or say something. Like, don't just say something just crassly.
Well, I do think this might be another subject for another, which is media, liberal media, whatever. Democracy Now! Could even be a great one to talk about. The reality is that the figures that I first cited about how I know partly about Obama's 3 million returns versus 2 million for Bush is partly by sources from Democracy Now!
Yeah.
So there is stuff there. They do stuff like that. I haven't listened to Democracy Now! Around this issue. I've mostly listened to other mainstream to liberal sources, Nation, what's another one? I can't think of them right now. But
yeah,
all of them have really given a pass, have not talked about the cynical, the way that the Democratic Party is cynically using this, have not talked much about the context of the elections and understanding the uproar around this. Because I don't think you can understand this uproar, because this uproar is not one that comes from the ground, it comes from the top of society. So how do who's getting played here? And I feel like Democracy Now!, unless they bring that lens to it, is not doing us a service, unless they let us know that the people who are doing all this whistling and telling you that all this bad stuff's going on are your enemies, and they're trying to corral you into a trap.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they said that. I don't know. I wasn't listening.
All
But
right.
if they didn't bring that lens, then I would say I don't agree with them, and I think they should. Most people don't. Most people do associate open borders with Europe, and that's not open borders. Open borders mean, like you can cross freely, and
But you would certainly say that the border from Palestine, from West Gaza to Israel, that border, it does not compare from the French and the Italian border.
right,
Obviously, and
correct.
that's what I was just trying to make the comparison to. I wasn't trying to say that they have an open border. Certainly they have restrictions to go from one country
Yeah.
to another, and that is what I was trying to say. So open borders sounds something that it's something I certainly would like, but I don't know, maybe I find it, sometimes I feel as if some of the things are, maybe this is the way that I see it, maybe that is what makes me progressive, where I feel like I have many friends like Andy who definitely like these radical ideologies. I'm just like, whoa, but I don't know how we're going to fit them into or have them play out when you have so much against you, beating the odds. This is a binary system that is going to go against you, and that's what we were talking about when we were talking about our socialist video.
Yeah.
That I feel as if there isn't much opportunity for dissent, because when you have dissentful voices like yourself, you're going to have Democrats and Republicans team up against that.
Oh,
I don't know how else to say that. I don't know how else to point that out. I think that's why I feel like I am accessible, and I am trying to have people think outside of what is the mainstream. But I am still considered part of the mainstream when it comes to a lot of friends that are on this radical, divergent voice on the political left.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's this thing that I'm trying to grapple with.
The people who I would be saying this to are my colleagues at work, fellow workers. This is the people who I'd be trying to convince of this, and maybe they believe that, maybe they agree with this. I will say that if you find yourself getting upset about this policy right now, right, and thinking that the Democrats are somehow some sort of salve to this, then we don't have much in common, because the Democrats you're basically falling into the trap of the good cop who's about to keep you in the very same prison that the bad cop wants to keep you in. And yes, Palestine and Israel have different borders, but all these nations are prisons for workers. They're all prisons of exploitation.
Yes.
All right? And until those get broken down, we're going to all be stuck. The working class is international class. That means we should not accept borders of any sort against any of our brothers and sisters on any border. Not the horrible ones that exist on the Gaza, the wall that separates Gaza from Israel, or the wall that they're talking about building or already have built under Clinton along the Mexico border. But any border, even the one along Canada or whatever, we should see all those as imaginary and be fighting for erasing any of those sorts of restrictions. And we should be figuring out how to build links between us as workers, between us and workers in Mexico or Central America, between us and workers in Canada. That's what our task is. And so I'm not making this pitch to the Democrats and Republicans. I'm making this pitch to fellow workers. Yeah. And unless we begin to conceive of the world this way, we won't be able to have that kind of revolution. This is why I said fighting for that revolution is that's how the fight for this revolution is related to the fight against racism and nationalism, because you can see how racism and nationalism undercut anybody's believing that we can have a world without borders. So, but it's not just a mental thing, it's something we're going to actually have to fight together for. We will have to actually have real solidarity. When teachers in this country go on strike in relationship to attacks on teachers in Mexico or Central America or Africa or Afghanistan, then we know we're getting somewhere. But as it is right now, not only do many workers concerned about the porous borders, maybe not the way Trump is, but the way Obama is, all right, and the way Clinton is, and as long as you have any of that kind of concern, or if you're okay with your workers being armed and going across their borders into Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan, if you're okay with that sort of illegal invasion, which I would say is much more pernicious than any M13 invasion, all right, then you are falling into the trap of the capitalists, and you're making it impossible for this world to be changed in any meaningful way. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. You got that clear. All right.
Best episode ever.
Okay. I actually thought some other ones were good too, but now I'm realizing it's going to get better with time.
Do you have any last thing to say around this immigration stuff? Because I feel like I talked a lot. I just want to make sure, because is there any last thing you want to, and I would put it in.
I can just hear some people saying something along the lines of how there has to be some control, because otherwise you'd open floodgates, and then there are lots of people who would come here for immigrants coming here to the USA. And I think that for me, I don't know what's wrong with that. I don't know what's wrong with that if they did come. I think that would make the USA and Mexico have pressures to have a less corrupt government. But I don't think people want to help other countries. And I'm not just taking from my country. I'm not being biased about that. I have traveled the world to 20 different countries. I've seen what it's like when you have one country have patriotism over another because of xenophobic ideas, like in Haiti and Dominican Republicans. When I think of Haitians trying to go over just for work, and Dominicans being very racist towards them because they're darker skinned. And it always seems to me that the darker your skin color is in the world of immigration, you're just not wanted. You're just not wanted. And for me, that is really where people's fears of immigration, yes, it does to do with the economy, but why is it that, England accepts a lot of immigrants from Italy and from France, but they're very hostile towards accepting a lot of Chinese immigrants? When I was in England, it's very hard for Asian immigrants to come over. They always make them have to go through all these hoops. But if you're Italian, yes, they have a treaty, or not a treaty, they have some deal with Europe. Well, after Brexit, not anymore. But I think there's just a lot of xenophobia, and there's just legacy of racism, which I know some of my friends, not my friends, just one particular I can think of, that is going to heart me on it, thinking that there is some boogeyman. No, there isn't a specific boogeyman, but it's a mental state of thinking, I think, for people when it's not that they're just because they're immigrants, it's because they're people of color. And Donald Trump represents what everyone else is thinking. He has no filters. He said that there are people from shithole countries should not come here. And immigrants from Norway are accepted. Well, I can tell you there's so many people in my family that are university grads and that would like to have an opportunity to work. But because Mexico is very corrupt and they have education, they're not able to be given that opportunity which they worked hard and studied for. But apparently all Mexicans are rapists and drug lords, and so anyhow. Yeah, I don't know much like what I can add to that. I think
that's important.
We're quite on the same wavelength when it comes to immigration, except for me, it's just, I guess for me, I get a little bit, when I say realist, I feel disillusioned to think that something could happen for my people when there's so much against people of color. I think that is the reason why I say I'm a realist, and that I compromise with policies, because it is a step towards, of course I would love an open border, But for me, it's so hard to ask something from people in power, that for me it's more realistic to ask just a little bit, enough so that the rest of people can push for more. But you have to get somewhere, and I think that that's where my realism comes from. It isn't that I stand with Democrats. It's more of just like, I come from a country where you don't expect much from your own government. So to push for something that we would all want isn't something that we know. Here people are so illusioned to be politicians. In Mexico, you say to be a politician, you're never going to be trusted even within your family. And here, I can see many white families push their children, you should be a politician. And in Mexico, you're just a politician, you're just like, you're never trusted in our family, because that's how it is. And so I think for us, it's just like, when I say realistic, it's just because I'm coming from experience where, not to say that this government's not corrupt, except it's corrupt at an international level, the USA, where we're corrupt within our own country. I don't know how else to say that. All right, so what will we be discussing for next week?
That's good. Okay, I'm still up with North Korea. You know, the thing you brought up about the media is interesting to me, though. But I'm going to say North Korea, because there's a lot of. This is a related issue going on with North Korea and the whole trick that's being played again.
Yeah.
By both parties again. There's another trick being played. We can talk about that. So I'm going to say North Korea.
All right, so we will discuss that.
Wait, but what do you think?
I'm fine for it. I had agreed to it.
Okay, but
yeah, do you remember I had said?
But you don't want to talk about democracy.
You changed it for today, so that's why I'm saying, like, I was ready for that topic. So I don't actually have a topic in mind. I think it's important to discuss it. And I actually did want to discuss it, but this is also very important because there's a lot of frenzy right now that's going on in the media.
Yeah.
I don't have any other topic besides that in mind. We should discuss the media another time.
Right.
I'm not hardly bothered.
So.
Oh, by the way, your mother sent me such a lovely note.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah, that was nice. It made me feel a little bit better about who I am.
Oh, that's great. That's going to go on the video. So thank you for joining us. Oh, thank you for joining us this week. I promised my partner that I would urge people, if you've listened to this, which I think it's going to be hopefully shorter, 40 minutes, I'm hoping.
All right.
You should, if you like what you're hearing, hit subscribe, the bell notification button, and the like. Brandy said I had to say that. So
yeah, it's
I'm saying it this week, and maybe not next week, but
I'll say it probably.
All right. So thank you for joining us. We have more to say about immigration and all this stuff.
And leave comments if you want. You can certainly say something. Don't leave a comment about something about what I'm wearing. There are more important issues to discuss than my voice.
Baltimore, baby.
Yeah. So anyhow. All right.
Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Ciao.
Bye. Well, okay.
Well, here's what I want to record. I want to record simply not, well, you can post if you want to.
Okay.
But not so much it's not to enter into a discussion, it's sort of like a memo to remember what to discuss for the next time. So let's just, you and I have this conversation, not because we're going to add it to it, unless you find something that you want to add to it, mostly because I think I'll forget our train of thought. Does that make sense? Because we're not entering into debates now, or even our disagreements. We can enter a disagreement, but just as to record what we have to remember for the next conversation. Because I don't.
You mean next week or
whenever?
Okay.
Whenever, but at least
some
it'll
future
be archived.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So here is my argument to that.
Okay.
This, if we're going to, maybe this is around, maybe a topic around media.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what from my understanding of what you're saying is that democracy now is jumping on the Democrat trend to push their agenda to be pro-Democrat.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so
that's a simple way of saying it, but that's yes.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to it?
No.
All right. So now that I've got what you're stating, now we can discuss it and debate it further in another video. But I will state this. This is what I will state, so I remember my position. Democracy now is a very, it's not perfect, but it is an alternative form of media that accepts criticism and is and has been covering immigration during Obama years, inviting lots of immigration activists during this year, and as soon as the first deportee happened, with the first DACA deportee happened in 2017 under the Trump administration, they covered it immediately. They have been covering these things. They have been even covering families as well. And they covered it under Obama administration as well. I didn't listen to all the time like I listened to it, because I made a commitment when Trump was elected in 2017, I would listen to every single time, and I've been listening to every single day so far. So I've been an informed citizen. What I'm trying to say is that prior to that, I listened scatteredly to it, and even in those scattered times, I did listen to it being covered about Obama. So I would say it's a little unfair for you to say, here's my position, for you to say that they're just jumping on this trend of Democrats pushing their agenda for in the 2018 elections. I think it's a little unfair to say that, because they have lots of diverse voices coming onto their show, both progressive, even socialists, even Democrats, and challenging Democrats as well. They challenge Democrats very well. As a matter of fact, many Democrats don't come onto the show when they're invited. So to challenge them, and that's all I'm trying to say. That as a news outlet, they also, just to be fair, cannot cover every single topic there is to cover as well. There isn't possibility to be covering every single topic. I would love for them to have covered what happened to Chelsea Manning when she decided to almost commit suicide with the tons of pressure that she got. They didn't cover it, but they invited her many times. There's a mental health issue that needs to be discussed, and they should invite doctors about that. They didn't cover it. But it's, how do you cover within 1 hour, 5 days of the week, of all the international topics that you need to discuss about? So I don't know, what would you say to that? I do think that there is a wave when the Democrats try to push for something, and all of a sudden there is a wave that is happening, and people do jump onto that. But I wouldn't say that this is the first time they're covering it. Are they inviting different voices to cover it? Yes, now more so. Yes, because it is magnified under Trump administration. Maybe that's where the criticism could go.
Right.
But I don't know. You tell me, what would you say to well, maybe we can discuss this on the next video or whatever.
Not North Korea?
No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't discuss North Korea.
Yeah.
I'm just saying whatever video we watch, whatever video we make, again, we can always discuss.
You wanted to memorialize this issue, so you have.
It's archived.
Okay, it's archived. I don't think I'm going to put this, because it's too much then. It's like...
Yeah, I know. That's why I said this is just for... Because
I
forget.
I'm going to respond.
I'm not writing up.
I'm going to respond to that, but I think we should sign off.
Okay.
Are we going to say bye?
Oh, you're going to respond another time?
Yes.
Oh, that's fine.
Like not on video or anything like that, because what's the point? I mean, we're not going to have it now.
That's fine.
I can tell you that way you can be more prepared.
You can tell me at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, definitely. No, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not bothered.
All right.